Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown,
the unofficial sumo podcast
for official sumo fans.
Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown. This is Ryan.
This is Jake.
And today we are joined by Jonathan Wagner of Mr. JWags channel on YouTube. Jonathan, how the hell are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm still in Utah for 2 more weeks doing School of Rock, and then we figure out where employment comes from. Yay.
Well, good luck with that. Today, as always, usually when we're talking with Mr. JWags, we don't have a set schedule. We're just going to start probably talking about Hakuho, and then we'll just let the conversation evolve from there. So why don't we just get the conversation started off there? Mr. JWags, what are your initial thoughts on Hakuho's retirement?
I've sort of been calling this in for like the past year and a half. It's just finally happened. It's like he's only like completed 2 tournaments in the past 2 years, right? Like the Ghost Macho last year and this year. So I've been making we're in the post Hakuho era, but it's like, you know, like when Peter O'Toole got like that one last Oscar nomination, like right, and they're like, yeah, okay, and they snuck it right in, yeah. So I think Hakuho, he just managed to put a cherry on top of what was already an amazing career. There's no argument to be made statistically for another Yokozuna being the greatest Yokozuna of all time. Unless you want to argue that like Futobayama or Raiden or Tanakaze or one of those people who weren't in the current, you know, sumo calendar were somehow better. I just don't buy the idea that somehow in every other sport we've seen in modern times, the sport gets better over time in terms of like the play. Like, why don't we think that would happen with sumo? Like sumo and baseball, I feel like everyone thinks was way better 100 years ago.
Yeah, no, you're probably right that Hakuho would probably, with all of today's modern technological advances, is probably able to get himself in better shape than what they were back in the day. But yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, we've been in a post-Hakuho era for a while now. It's just kind of been, hey, isn't it nice when Hakuho shows up to win the Yusho and then he's gone for another 3 to 4 tournaments? So it's not really going to feel all that different. I don't feel like it just, we won't have those sporadic, oh, hey, look, Hakuho's here to ruin everybody else's day.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it feels a little like Jack Nicklaus in his 40s, where every now and then he just come in and like lay waste to the field. And it's like, all right, I'll see you at the seniors. Like
Ryan had no idea who Peter O'Toole was, but now you're talking sports. He's like, oh, yeah. Okay.
I know
right.
exactly who Jack Nicklaus is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
I mean, he holds basically every record of consequence except for consecutive wins. And I mean, other than records he couldn't possibly have gotten because of his dominance, like most Kinboshi, he was a Yokozuna at 22. Of course, he's not going to have most Kinboshi.
Yeah.
He's not going to have most wins at Sekiwake because he was barely a Sekiwake.
What a scrub.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 3 basho as Sekiwake for Hakuho. One as Komusubi. and very impressively, 4 as a Maegashira.
And he still got a Kimboshi, didn't he?
He got 1 against Asashoryu.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
I was also looking at it. Terunofuji has only spent 5 tournaments at Sekiwake, and he has 2 Yusho, 2 Jun Yusho, and his Ozeki Wake when he went down from Ozeki the first time, where he went 0-4 and then Kyujo. Those are his only 5 tournaments at Sekiwake.
And he's earned Ozeki hard way twice.
Mm-hmm.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So I had the one major question that I wanted to bring up, because I think you're uniquely suited to answer this here, Mr. JWags. Terunofuji's career.
Yes.
I mean, obviously we can't compare anybody else like directly to Hakuho, but
you can, it just won't look good for the person you're comparing to Hakuho.
You shouldn't, if you want them to look good, compare anyone else to Hakuho. For Terunofuji though, what would his career have looked like without Hakuho? With your extensive Shadow of Hakuho project, I'm curious, just what do you think his career would have looked like? He's now the sole Yokozuna, which
yes,
maybe that's
the sole Yokozuna. Sorry, I have to do it just once.
He so maybe that was part of why Hakuho waited until this time, so that, you know, there was another Yokozuna, so he could now retire gracefully or what have you.
I need to interject real quick. I don't know if you already have this in the works, Mr. JWags, but I need your next song on your like Kyushu preview to be a sole funk song for the sole Yokozuna Teruno Fuji.
I will once I get back to New York. That's where all my studio. I haven't done any songs because I don't have my studio there. I just have like a mic set up here.
All right.
All right, we'll give you a pass just this once then.
Once I get back to the old Yamaha keyboard, we're using all the patch sounds. It's going to be so much fun. Well, oddly enough, I spent a bunch of today updating some of the Shadow of Hakuho spreadsheet because now I can start settling up on it because he's now stopped winning.
Yeah, final stats and all that. Yeah.
Well, he went Kyujo 20 times in his career, 19 as Yokozuna, and the person by far most helped by his absence in the real life has been Terunofuji. Terunofuji has won 4 tournaments in Hakuho's absence, including his last 3 absences. So just in general with that, we can look at saying, like, yes, Terunofuji has absolutely already in the Shadow of Hakuho benefited so much. The other ones were Kakuryu, Takayumi, and Takakeisho with 2. Okay. But right now, looking at the sheet here, and keep in mind, these have not been fully updated because I haven't finished the series yet. But
I'm
right
sorry
now,
to jump the gun on you then.
well, no, we have 4 more reps. We're at Yusho 31 right now. For those of you who don't know what the Shadow of Hakuho is, it's an alternate timeline where Hakuho never existed. And I go through all now 45 of his Yusho and award the deserving Rikishi from that tournament, who was not Hakuho. Terunofuji, I have right now getting 3 extra Yusho.
Wow.
Okay, so he'd be sitting at 8.
He'd be sitting at 8 right now. 2 locks and a strong case.
Would he have been Yokozuna and probably forced to retire back in 2017 if Hakuho did not exist?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just because at that point then it would be just Kakuryu at this point. It'd be Kakuryu and Terunofuji had he been forced to retire, because that's right when Harumafuji was the end of 2017.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think at that point they wouldn't want to get rid of a Yokozuna unless I had one in the wings. And as I recall, Asano Yama wasn't quite Ozeki status then. He made his Ozeki run in like 2019, early 2020.
Yeah.
Also, just looking at Terunofuji's record, I don't think the closest he could have been is if he won either May or July of 2017. That's the only time I could think of that he could maybe have been promoted early.
Yep.
Was he in the running for those?
He was in the running for May and what do you say, 2017?
It looks like in 2017 of May, he was coming off of a playoff loss for a Yusho. So maybe if he won that, did Hakuho win that one instead?
Yeah, but he was also coming off of 3 consecutive Kataban 8 win, Kataban 8 win, Kataban 8 wins. So I don't think he would have been promoted off of that, just because they wanted to probably make sure he had a little bit more. And also the Junior show was only 12 wins, which often they don't consider the Yokozuna standard. At least my Kaio episode, they were very hard on the 13 win thing being the Yokozuna equivalent.
Fair enough.
But yeah, that would have been a playoff loss for Terunofuji. And I don't know, did Hakuho win that 2017 one in March?
No. That was the Kisano Sato 2.
So that June Yusho in May would have been a playoff loss followed by a Yusho for Terunofuji. So maybe if they're feeling like being lenient, but yeah, like you said, they didn't have to because they still had Kakuryu at that point.
And I think they were still they were probably going to be. When you give someone like the rope, and it's like, we need to make sure you can be here. He'd been constantly going Kyujo and having one on, one off, one on, one off. Considering it took him like basically a year of excellence to get Yokozuna this time, when we barely had any Yokozuna there in the first place.
Yeah. I think we probably could look at like Takakeisho, because he had like the 12-3 playoff loss, and they were saying like, oh, if he came back and won the Yusho, or when he did win the Yusho back in, I think, Kyushu of last year, they were like, if he wins, we'll kind of see. He needs to hit like 13 wins or something like that. So it probably would have been something similar for Terunofuji there. It's like, we'll see how it looks and then judge.
Well, we keep forgetting that in that tournament just before Aki 2020, the only reason he didn't get the 13 wins and a shot at the championship was because he got hanked. Tochinoshin hanked him right in the middle of that tournament. And he ended up that was his second loss. And then he basically won out except for like one other. Yeah, he lost to Shodai, but beat everyone else. Like he would have had a case for 2-13 and 2 championships back to back.
Okay.
So were not for the Henka, we could already have the shortest Yokozuna.
Yeah,
I gotta say, I'm gonna miss when Tochinoshin is gone and we don't have anybody like right at the top pulling blatant henkas like that anymore.
Yes.
well,
I'm gonna miss
Chiyoshoma's
that.
still there.
Yeah,
Chi-
I don't know.
and
He's
Shoma's
ranked
not a
up-
guy
above
who's got-
Tochinoshin.
Well, yes, now, but like Tochinoshin in his prime was like for a year was always a championship threat. If Chiyoshoma won, that'd be like up there with Tokashoryu winning one.
Mhm.
And they would hate him anyway, and they wouldn't give him Ozeki because they hate how much he hankas.
I think I would really enjoy a Chiyoshoma Yusho just just to see everybody. Oh, people are going to be at each other's throats.
That'd be one of the
Especially 'cause
saltiest things ever.
it's-
Yeah.
Minimum 4 Hanka involved in any Chiyoshoma Yusho. Oh, it'd be beautiful. And you know
Oh.
he'd do it to clinch it too. You absolutely
Oh,
know
God,
it would.
yes.
It would be somebody like, oh no show, who just isn't gonna do anything about it. It's just gonna let it happen. Oh God, let's will this
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
world. Chiyoshoma Yusho, let's go.
We've got a new
Oh
dream.
no! Come on! Like there are so many other random guys who I would love to see have that more so. Like I want the Ura random one where it's just like Ura ends up just like dancing his way and he like wins an 11-win U show. I see that happening in the near future. Us having a couple 12 and 11-win U shows in the near future.
Let's do a little exercise. I want to throw
Okay.
out a couple of just random Maegashira names, and if they won a U show, would you care? And we'll get it from both Mr. JWags and Jake here. So we'll start with Kodo Eiko. If he won a U show, do you care?
No. I mean, first of all, I don't think he ever will. He's got
Well,
like
obviously, none of these
yeah.
guys are going to win a
Yeah.
U show.
I mean, I'd feel good for the stable. I'm like, you haven't won one in a while. Like, okay, that's good. But no, like he's just like he always has that like frowny substitute teacher vibe. And it's just like, all right, okay. It's like, all right. But yeah, he's never been any one of them like, I need to get with this guy who can't keep his feet anywhere near the dohyo.
Yeah, the Kotos they've had like up to what, maybe 5 at a time in the top division.
Yeah.
They had 3 Ozeki at a time for a while.
Oh man.
Kodo Shogiku.
Kotomitsuki, Shogiku, and Kotoshu.
Okay.
Like they were a powerhouse, and like I'm trying to figure out a way to do this mathematically, where it's like when we had like series of dominants, like 2 Yokozuna from the same stable. Like, what does that do to how much does that help you not having to face the other awesome people in your stable?
Yeah.
But see, this is the problem. I've already done like the low-hanging fruit statistical stuff. Now it's like, oh my God, I have to go back through so much Sumo history now.
Now we have to to put up similar type of content. It's going to be hard now, and that sucks.
Well, there are only so many ways I can prove Hakuho is the best with stats without just like doing something incredibly obvious.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not like that's an incredibly hot take that people are needing to be proven.
Well, no, it's just like he's so awesome. It's just like that's what Shadow of Hakuho is. It's the idea that one person has created like this economic recession of wins. Well, I mean, you guys have ever played like you've ever had like an NBA franchise on or like a baseball franchise like on PlayStation, and you like just dominate for like a decade of championships. You're like, oh, whose championships did I take away in the real world?
Yeah.
Because like I have my super team on PlayStation.
My teams don't win in real life, so it has to happen somewhere.
Oh my God, sidebar, but I play the NBA one and I'm a Sacramento Kings fan. I had to have my franchise player traded off the Sacramento Kings because they were so hopeless I couldn't win a championship with them. As literally the greatest player in the NBA, I could not win a championship with them. I got to trade to the Hornets and we won. The Hornets.
That sounds pretty Sacramento Kings like.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm a Bills fan and a Kings fan. It's just the most brutal existence. Cubs fan, well, at least we got one.
Got
You're like-
2016.
You're like basically an honorary Minnesota sports fan at that point.
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't even want to talk about that football game today. I thought I was going to have to cancel myself. People aren't going to care, but Vikings just damn near blew a game to the Detroit Lions and pulled it out by the skin of their teeth. But oh my God.
Oh,
I hate
the
my team.
Lions.
I love them so
Ooh.
much. Yeah, it was bad. It was just bad conservative play calling. But we're here to talk about sumo.
We're here to talk about sumo, not the helmeted sports.
Yeah.
Well, the question I would love to talk about, first of all, the thing I've been sort of exploring on my channel recently is that now that we are in the Terra no Fuji era, the main problem we have is that we have this sort of, we used to have a very structured Sanyaku where it's like we have like 3 or 4 guys who are either Sanyaku or first Maegashira, and they would just sort of clean up the joy and then everyone else would sort of bounce off. Now, basically going from Terunofuji being his literal own tier, from Ozeki to like Maegashira 3 or 4 are roughly the same talent level now on any given day.
Yeah, there's
Who's
a lot
the
more
second
parity.
best Rikishi in sumo right now?
Healthy
Takakeisho.
Takakeisho.
Healthy Takakeisho. But
Healthy
yeah,
Takakeisho,
but it is a gap.
But still, healthy Takakeisho, what does that mean? I mean, he misses every third or fourth tournament, and he's the youngest Ozeki we've had in a while.
Yeah,
Whereas,
but in between those 3 to 4, he's dynamite.
he is, but that's also like, I just don't see him lasting into his 30s at this rate. One thing goes wrong with any of his joints, like if any of his major limbs go, or if his neck keeps getting hurt, like he needs his neck, which is weird for a guy who has no neck.
I think the way that I would put it is put Terunofuji aside. Who's the guy that I would trust most in any given basho, injuries aside, to get 12 wins? And Takakeisho would be that guy.
But injuries aside, that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now, like I think the most consistent number 2 guy, no pun intended, is Mitakeumi. He hasn't been out of the joy. He's been facing, literally for the past 3 years of his career, 4. He's never been out of the Joy Jin at the very least. So in every tournament, he's facing the hardest wrestlers, and he's gotten between like 7 and 10 wins for 3 years.
So Mitakeumi has been in the Joy or the Sanyaku ranks
4
since
years.
Kyushu of 2011.
Wow.
He was Maegashira 5, then he went up to Komosubi, and I don't think he's dropped.
Wait, 2011? Mitakeumi was in 2011?
2016, sorry.
Whoa.
2016. So 5 years.
That's okay.
The lowest he's dropped since then is Maegashira 3, but that's well within the Joy.
And that was for one tournament. Yeah, he's absolutely the most consistent, pretty good. But like, but you
can't trust him to get double digits.
We're definitely splitting hairs, because you are obviously very correct here. Like Takakeisho and like maybe Mitakeumi. I guess I'd probably put Takayasu in the same kind of similar boat with.
But I think he's
Takakeisho.
He's
but
past
like,
the curve for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. But like talent wise, like if everybody came in with no injuries, the guys that I'm picking other than Terunofuji, Takakeisho, Mitakeumi, I guess Takayasu, Shodai maybe, but like, yeah, there's a very nebulous second tier and it's very wide.
See, I would say if you would guarantee everyone their best possible basho, your number 2 is Ichinojo.
I mean, Ichinojo can pop off every once in a while. We've seen him get a 14-1. We've seen him get a 13-2. But I mean,
both shadow victories in the shadow of Hakuho.
Yeah, but that is super every once in a while for Ichinojo.
Yeah. If he puts up 15 of peak Ichinojo matches, yes, absolutely. If there's no days
that's what
off,
I'm saying. If we're talking about just upside, like Ichinojo, I think, is the guy who could go off for a 14-1 and possibly steal one away from Terunofuji. But right now, it's Terunofuji in the field.
Yeah,
and it's just so interesting to have so big of a field.
Where do we rank Shodai in all of this? So if we're gonna put together a consensus power rankings, or maybe not so consensus, obviously Terunofuji number 1, Mitakeumi Takakeisho number 3. Is Shodai number 4? Is that where we're kind of landing right now?
I mean, he's been reasonably healthy, and that's a thing. But right now, I actually think guys like Meisei and Wakataka Kage are better wrestlers right now. Like, I think they don't have the experience that Shodai has facing up against the top rankers, but I think right now they're wrestling better sumo.
If we're going with that standard, I might throw Kiri Bayama in there. I guess it was just the 9-6 tournament that he just had.
He's never had double digits in the Joy.
Yeah, we need to see that consistency from him. But I mean, he's definitely him. Wakataka Kage, like you said, Meisei, Takanosho a little bit. I mean, these are.
I'm
all
afraid
top
for
10
his
guys
knee,
right now.
but yeah. Well, and like I think Daisho has had a couple rough tournaments, and he's so inconsistent. But he's another guy I think could rip off another like January surprise.
Yeah, this the pusher thrusters is every once in a while there's a pusher thruster that is just on his game. I mean, we saw him take out Terunofuji this time, so if Daisho is feeling it again, chance he could take another Yusho.
Yeah, but if we're talking about, that everyone talks about Terunofuji being an injury risk, but if you look at it, he's only had since he's come back, he's been fine.
He's got a year straight of Yusho or Jun Yusho.
Yes, and before that, just from his comeback, he's only had one Kyujo, and he still got Kachikoshi in that tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's like
funny to me, like he's at this point it's more of a meme than anything, but like
yeah.
he just looks like he could fall apart at any time. And even though he's been back for like a full 2.5 years, it's like it's hard to regain that trust that he's going to stay healthy.
Not
But
for me.
every
He's
single
got
sumo
complete
wrestler,
trust.
yeah,
From me,
every
right
sumo
now.
wrestler's got joint issues.
For sure. But yeah, that glass cannon, we mentioned that kind of joke, that kind of expectation basically
Mhm.
every preview. It's like it just feel, to me at least, it feels like something that you got to at least be aware of as a possibility. But yeah,
At some point, you just have to trust the numbers, and it's like, even though this guy literally looks like the Michelin Man going into the ring, you gotta just accept that he showed up every day and excelled. I mean, if Tamawashi shows up every day, he rarely excels anymore, but still, he shows up every day. I think we're going to have an interesting tournament. I don't think Terunofuji wins the next tournament.
Ooh.
I think he's gonna. I just think it's been.
What have you seen from all these other people that would make you say such a bold statement?
So now that we've shut Jake down about his doubts, I don't think he's gonna win. But no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I think he's clearly the top, but it's like when Tiger Woods was at its peak. It's like someone's going to reach up and pick off every one or two. I don't see Terunofuji being a guy winning 6 in a row. He's always going to have someone like pop up a Daisho having a tournament of his life. I mean, I thought we were going to have that a little bit with Kiribayama, because Kiribayama beat the entire Sanyaku except for Terunofuji, and then lost to 5 Maegashira in the second week.
Yeah. I mean, he must have just been gassed that entire second week after a couple of 3+ minute matches.
Well, that's my thing with him and Hoshoryu. It's like, do they have enough beef to get to 10 wins regularly against the best guys?
Yeah. Kitabayama is probably 25, 26. He still has time to put on a little bit of extra weight, and he's got Kakadyu in his corner to help him out. I do have probably Sekiwake hopes for Kitabayama. I do think Hoshoryu will be beefing up. I think I've got Ozeki hopes for at least Ozeki for Hoshoryu. I think he's probably the guy that I see best bet besides Mitake Yumi to somehow put it all together for, let's say he gets 12 wins the next 2 Basho. F it, let's give him Ozeki. He deserves it after all he's done.
I need 3 Kachikoshi in a row.
Well, Mitake Yumi's got 9 and 6. So give him 2 12s. That'll be 33 over 3. He's been in.
I thought you were talking about Hoshoryu. Sorry.
Oh yeah. No.
He's a little further back.
Hoshoryu's got to earn that pretty good. I think Mitake Yumi is one of those guys where he can get a little bit of a softer Ozeki promotion just because he's been up there for so long, or maybe because he's been up there for so long, they're like, no, we really need to see that you've clicked another level instead of.
Well, I think at some point it's just like we're going to need Ozeki, and he's the one who's like, all right, he's not going to shit the bed. He's going to just be able to, even if he's an Ozeki, at worst, you're going to get 6 wins out of him. And then he'll come back the next tournament and get Kachikoshi. That's just what he does.
Yeah, he doesn't really go back-to-back Make Koshi all too often. I think it's probably happened once in the past 5 years that we've talked about.
And he's a 2-time champion.
He got a 6 and 9, then a 7 and 8, dropped only to Maegashira 3, and then was right back. So, but he's.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that was the one back-to-back Make Koshi that I was thinking of. There, he has had no other instances in the past 5 years of back-to-back Make Koshi.
Yeah. So, if we were looking for from a PR standpoint, who's the best person to be another Ozeki, Mitake Yumi feels like he's kind of been there. He almost feels like an institution at the
honorary Ozeki.
Yeah, a lifetime achievement award kind of thing.
He's on the list now for longest time spent at lower Sanyaku. He's now tied for 8th, and if he stays for 2 more, he'll be in 5th place all by himself.
Yeah, and once you get over 30, you're far more likely to become Ozeki.
Ryan and his statistical fallacies over here.
I'm sorry. 3 out of the top 5 people on the list for most Sanyaku or lower Sanyaku ranks have become Ozeki. The lower 5 never did. It's just statistics, Jake.
It's facts, Jake. Yeah. Come on, man.
You can't argue with those.
Can't argue with the facts. But this is also what I'm saying about Ichinojo. If Ichinojo can get a 9-win, and then a 14-1, that also might be good enough if he can pull off a dominant enough Yusho, because he just needs that one amazing tournament that his body allows him to do every year to 3 years.
God, I'd be interested to see if a 9-9-14 would cut it. Maybe when they're looking at, shoot, it's Shodai and Takakeisho. We don't know how long those guys are going to last. We need 2 Ozeki. Let's get somebody else up there.
Yeah. Well, he's also, when healthy, is remarkably consistent. 7 and 10 wins just seems to be where Ichinojo lives now. So if he just gets one just spectacular tournament in the middle of there, same with Mitakeumi, if he can pull another 13 win in between a 9 and a 10, I think they'll do it.
Yeah.
What about sorry, go ahead, Jake.
Nope.
Okay. What about Meisei? We've mentioned him a little bit.
Mhm.
He's had one tournament at Sekiwake. Now he will be a Sekiwake again. Do we think he's got any sneaky Ozeki potential in there, or maybe like Takanosho? Hey, I'll be Sekiwake for 4 basho in a row, and then I'll lose it, and it'll take me a while to get back there.
I think Meisei is like my poor man's Asanoyama. It's just like he used to be a pusher thruster and now is like really started like leaning into the belt sumo and started trusting himself a little bit more. And I think since he dropped back down to Juria last time, he's only gotten Kachikoshi every tournament since here. So
other than Teruno Fuji, he's the only guy that's had straight Kachikoshi since July. And July of last year.
Yeah, and he's been in the Joy now for 4 straight tournaments, getting Kachikochi each time. So this could be a case where he just needs one spectacular tournament, Jun Yusho, he could pop it out. But I think that's probably a year away, just because I think he's the kind of guy who's not going to overwhelm anyone, but I could easily see him getting like 3 11s in a row.
Yeah.
And he's only 26. He feels like, if you don't mind me segueing into a semi-related topic, Meisei and Hoshoryu and Kiribayama, Wakataka Kage, there seems to be a resurgence of what we've kind of started calling like cruiserweight size guys.
Mm-hmm.
Meisei clearly the most successful of that group so far, but do you think that's like the future? Do you think Meisei is kind of like
Meisei's over average? I mean, Meisei's like 150.
Yeah,
that's about average or a little slightly higher.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and I think we got to take Ura out of that. I mean, Ura kind of was in that conversation. I think people
he's over
300 left him
now.
there. Yeah, Ura is out of like the Pixie conversation.
I think
a fluffy
Ura,
boy now.
Ura and Meisei, I guess in my head they're exciting style matches with the like middleweight size guys, I guess you might call them.
Wakataka Kage he's the king of the Pixies.
Oh yeah,
he's the king.
But there's a lot more like fast, active, and generally smaller guys going on. But that trend in general, is that something you think that do you see that catching on more, or do you think it's just a fluke that we have a handful of these guys going at the same time here?
I think it's just also right now we just have I think we have a sort of a dip in the overall quality of the Bansuke from even like 2-3 years ago. It's like I think Tochinoshin at his current skill level would have been out of sumo 2 years ago in that Bansuke. So I just think right now the being heavy will always be a good strategy. Look at Kaisei, like he can barely move anymore, but you still have to get him out of the ring. So I just think that the younger guys are faster and better right now just because they have a little bit more energy, but they're probably not going to have the staying power. The extreme example being Enho. Very rarely do we get the cruiserweight guys making it all the way up to like higher Sanyaku, Yokozuna. I mean, like there's obviously Haramafuji, but other than that, like in the past 20 years, we haven't had a real skinny guy do that yet. So, I mean, also young Asashoryu, I guess, was svelter, but he was never his nephew's size.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the extreme example would be going all the way back to Chiyano Fuji, who I think was like the lightest guy at the same time he was at the top of the rankings or something.
Same with Haramafuji. They were both under 300 pounds when they became Yokozuna.
Yeah.
So this data is a couple of bashos old, but there was one episode we were talking about who are like the small guys and the medium guys and what our size tiers are. I'm curious, who do you guys think has the highest BMI in the top division right now?
Takakeisho.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
It is Takakeisho. His BMI is 59.76. Followed very closely by Chiyomaru.
Yep. Okay, I believe that.
This is a little bit of old data because I had Aki Sayama in the top division when I did this list, but
oh, that's a body type right there.
That's yeah. Yeah, if we're talking physiques.
Well,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
I mean it's like him and Chiyomaru. It's just like this big like thing of armor. It's just like here we are. This is what we're doing. Okay.
I'm just gonna stand
just-
here, try and push me. I dare you.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me of Amanishiki. I miss him.
You know, we never really got to see a whole lot of Amanishiki. We saw him like come back from Juryo at one point, but for us, it was more like, okay, we've never seen this guy. Apparently, it's a big deal that he's coming back to the
Yeah.
top division. So we never really got to see a whole lot of Amanishiki,
That
unfortunately.
was his last Kachikoshi was the oldest Kachikoshi in Makuuchi history.
Oh wow, what was he like? 38,
39.
All right. Be curious to see Tamawashi show Hozan if they're still kicking around in a couple years to see if they can. I mean, Hozan's going to be back in the top division, or at least he should be. They're both going to be 37 for this next tournament, so it'd be interesting to see if those old guys can hold on for like another year or so and get the oldest Kachikoshi. But if they are, it's probably not a good sign for where
For
Sumo
Sumo.
is.
What does that say about the rest of the division? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've now, like I said, we've officially hit tiers. We've hit like Terunofuji at the top. We have sort of the Ozeki to Joy blob, and then we have sort of this. The bottom ranks sort of are like one or two hot youngsters, and then just a whole bunch of veterans who are just too good to retire right now, but like not good enough to make any strong pushes, except for maybe like the occasional Myogiryu or like a Tamawashi getting double-digit wins.
Mm-hmm.
But at no point was anyone saying, Myogiryu Yusho. But then again, anything can happen in this Banzuke.
Yeah. So looking at the Banzuke from Aki below Maegashira 3, where we're now eliminating like Wakataka Kage, Hoshoryu, Kiribayama, even Koto Nowaka, is there anybody you see that you think has like future Ozeki potential? Because I'm just kind of scanning through the list, and it's like either a bunch of guys that are late 20s, early 30s that if they were going to do something, they'd probably have done it by now, and
Well,
Endo included in that list.
I think Onosho, if he can figure out his front-back balance issues, could easily give us an Ozeki run with like a Jun Yusho in the middle.
He's had like 2 to 3 years to figure that out.
Yeah, but we're at a point where like he still hasn't hit his physical peak. He could still have another bump left in his sumo, and the top is so like pillowy soft. He could get back up to the Sanyako with one really good tournament.
That's true. I forget he's 25 years old, and I mean,
Same age as Takakeisho, because they're the two that grew up together.
Yeah, so
he's younger than Wakataka Kage and Kiribayama.
There you go.
Yeah, that kind of
Like-
puts it in perspective. And yeah, you think like Shodai didn't really make his leap until he was what, 28, 29 years old. So I get, Onosho does still have time to kind of figure it out. And he's been hanging out mostly in the Joy for the past
Maegashira
year.
2 is the kryptonite. Anything like since the injury, he has not been able to get a Kachikoshi, Maegashira 2 or above. So
Yep.
this next tournament will be a watershed.
And they're often catastrophic.
Yeah, 2 and 13 in there, where he lost the first 13. What happened at Basho Onosho? Come on.
I think he gets into his head and is like, when he's in the Joy, it's rare for Onosho to face 8 consecutive opponents who are better than him. And so when that happens, I think he gets into his head after the first 5 consecutive losses, like, I'm wrestling good and losing. He's not used to that. So I just think we're at the point now where the older guys have now retired out, aged out, gotten slightly worse. He has a shot, especially against guys like Terunofuji, who he's been able to beat on and off.
Yeah.
The only way you beat him is by getting him moving backwards. Onosho is one of the few guys who can get that kind of tachi-eye.
Yeah. Daisho was able to do that against Terunofuji this Basho as well. And I'd imagine that's how Meisei beat him as well. I don't remember that match off the top of my head.
He got up under him. He just got under and like got him just sort of twisting, as I recall.
Oh, yeah. And he ended up winning by Shitate Nage there against Terunofuji. So, yeah, it wasn't just pushing him out.
Was that
but
the
back
elbow
to your
pad
question.
match, or was that Daisho?
That was Daisho where like all the pads came off.
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
A dark horse I have for Ozeki, below Maegashira 3, Abi.
Okay.
Mm,
I mean, I don't want to accept that, but I could. It
Abi
wouldn't,
was
like,
a
blow my
Sanyaku
mind.
wrestler.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
was. I mean, he's been making himself look good because he is a Joy lower Sanyaku type Rikishi. So he should be wiping the floor with all of these people. But I mean, if we look at what Abi was doing before he was facing Makushita and Joy Rikishi, he wasn't lighting the world on fire. He had 4 straight at Komosubi where he got like
Not nothing.
8 to 9 wins, and then he got like a 5 and 10, a 7 and 8. Started off poorly and got suspended. So he was kind of on his way back down a little bit. Who's to know how far that would have gotten? So
I don't
how
think he
old
would have
is
dropped
he?
down to Jurio. I think he's like 27. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're
No, I
telling
don't
me
think
is
he would have dropped down to Jurio. No, I agree there.
so, but these are the upsides I see for Abi. One, he's still under 29, which is sort of the age, the physicality, like people start to break down. He was at a Joy Sanyaku level a year ago. He's basically had the year to rest and sort of work out his aggression on people who aren't quite as good as him, which has allowed him to develop a little more of a belt game. I think he's only gotten like Yorikiri 7 times in his career, but 3 of them have been since he's made his comeback to Jurio.
He's working
So-
on stuff, I guess.
If he can actually come up with a plan B other than just like straight up Abizumo, then I could absolutely see him becoming a smaller Terunofuji kind of guy, because they have similar proportions, even though like Terunofuji is obviously much bigger, but they're both like high-waisted guys with really long legs. If Abi's figured out a way to use those legs for defense, then yeah, maybe he can win a couple belt battles with some side throws, which is what he's been able to do in a couple of these tournaments. So I just
will
see a
say
guy.
His 13 and 2 in Jurio this past Basho, no throws or Yorikiris. It's all Oshi, Tsuki, or slapdowns.
Well, because he knows the guys who are there now. I think his last tournament, he had to do a little more improvising, and now he's figured it out. I think he's a smarter wrestler than he was a year ago, and he looks a little more humble too, which is probably a good thing.
I sure
Yeah.
hope so. But yeah, like just like we were mentioning earlier, he's a strong pusher thruster, definitely always in the running as somebody who could pop off for a tournament, have a really good one. You know, even if he didn't have anything on the belt, he's definitely a candidate for like a surprise U show, I think.
Well, for true talent level, where would you put him on this Bansuke? Like Magashira 6? Like, I think he's definitely better than guys like Shimano Umi and Terutsuyoshi.
I would have him in the Joy, possibly Komosubi level.
I'd agree with that.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, yeah, he will be up there once he's back, and I am thinking strongly about picking him as my champ in the next prediction series.
Ryan has come into terms with a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah,
We'll see how he does. I think he's already better than the guys of the lower half of the Makuuchi Bansuke, so his next 2 tournaments are going to be double-digit wins until he gets back up to the Joy.
We'll see. Maybe this is the spot for a surprise Abi Yusho, just feasting on Chiyomaru. Tokushoryu's going to be gone, but like Tsurugisha is going to be gone.
Kaisei,
Kagayaki, Chiyotairyu,
the ghost of
Hidenomimi. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I mean, if Abi's gonna win one, this is a very good spot for him to do so. Somebody that is clearly fighting below his pay grade here could rack up a lot of wins before they start scheduling him against the higher rankers. I mean, he saw how long it took them to schedule Miyogiryu against like the Ozeki, and he never did fight Terunofuji in the last tournament. They are
and
highly reluctant
Terunofuji's
to do
not going to
so.
win because he's been cursed by JWags.
Yeah.
So
I just think that eventually he is going to take. He's going to have that like 11-4 there. It's just like he's going to have that second week where everything hurts. And I think it's just, well, now that like society's coming back a little bit and more people are getting vaccinated and you're doing more stuff, it's like he's going to have to do more of the Yokozuna sort of like BS, which is like, not that it's BS. I love all the culture, but he's going to have to do a lot of like the appearances. He's going to have to doing like, I don't think he was feasted that much because everyone had to go back into COVID protocol. There's going to come a point where they're going to try to have like, show our Yokozuna, and there aren't 4 of them to handle it now. There's only 1. So
things are starting to look a lot better COVID wise in Tokyo and Japan. Like I think they're at their lowest case rates in over a year. So could be a point. I don't know how Japan's handling it and all that stuff. Could be a point sometime soon where, yeah, maybe he is making a lot more appearances. Maybe they do bring all the fans back into the stadium. That could be a mental thing for Terunofuji. He hasn't done this in front of a full stadium of loud cheering, screaming fans.
What if that's
it could make a
kryptonite?
difference. It could make a difference. Maybe all those people cheered for him. There could be pressure in his head. Now that he knows he's the only Yokozuna and will be for the foreseeable future, maybe that puts a different level of pressure on him when, okay, I was the only Yokozuna this time, but next time Hakuho will be back and take a little bit of the pressure off me. We don't know how he can deal with that. Now, having dropped all the way down to Jonidan and fought his way back up to make Yokozuna, I'm pretty confident in his mental fortitude, but we still don't absolutely know.
Well, it comes down to also like his playoff record a bit. Like I don't know if I mentioned this before, but like I'm doing a research project on like head-to-head playoff stuff that has a predictive value for like future matches. It's going to take a while. So there are a lot of these in history. But Terunofuji generally doesn't do well if he has to fight twice in a day, especially since he's come back. I think he's only had one playoff win in his entire career out of 4.
I just looked at it. Yeah, he's 1-3, and I think he's won the most recent. That was the one against Takakeisho. But like you said, I think he lost that first match that day.
It's one of those things. Takakeisho, when healthy, he's one of the few people who can beat him. Same with Onosho, Daisho. He doesn't have if you can keep him off the belt and keep him moving, you have a chance to win.
Yeah, I think what I've heard is when he's moving back, that's when he's in the most pain. Like if he's moving forward, it doesn't bother him a whole lot. But if you get him moving back, that's when it really does start to bother his knees. So yeah, that's definitely. Onosho's the kind of guy that can do that. Takakeisho's the kind of guy that can do that.
And Onosho's going to be in the Joy next tournament.
Yep.
So, and I just see a lot of guys finding their true talent level right now because we have so many 7 and 8s versus 8 and 7s. Like we now have, I have the notes right here. Like this is something I mentioned in my last episode. At the beginning of the year in January, we only had 8 7 or 8 win Rikishi. In the past 2 tournaments, it's been 20 and 17. So I think we just have a lot of guys hitting their natural talent level, and we're not going to see as many jump ups until some of the younger guys start like breaking out a little bit more, like Kota Nawaka. Hopefully he comes back for that knee thing because that did not look good.
Yeah, when I hear meniscus damage, that hopefully it's not like a full tear or whatever you do to your meniscus. I'm not going to pretend to know what the knee looks like.
I believe it's a partial tear from the meniscus.
Partial sounds better than complete. So hopefully he's able to come back from that. Not too soon. If you've got to sit out another tournament, drop down to Juryo Kota Nawaka, you're young enough and talented enough. You can easily recover from that. Don't force yourself.
Kota Shoho got his first Kachikoshi in like a year, it feels like.
What happened to that guy?
What it feels like is he made the Joy, he got hurt, and someone told him, you have to stop winning with the sumo that has been winning for you. You have to win like an Ozeki if you're going to win up here. And he got in his head he had to become a completely different wrestler while trying to recover from injury. And I think his like body started giving out at the same time he was trying to do something new, like revamp his swing in the middle of a freaking career. So I think like a lot of that like push him down. I think he's just taking a little while to get his feet under him because he was so young. It was like he just shot straight up so fast. He's still what? He's still 22?
Yeah.
21?
22 years old, and he just turned 22.
Yeah.
So
if he had come out of college and he was in Juryo, we'd like, this guy's a prodigy. Look at how high ranked he is right out of college.
I think Flairk and I deemed him future Ozeki Koto Shoho in the midway episode of his first Makuuchi Basho.
I said he was Yokozuna material. Like, come on. Like we had belief.
Yeah. I still deep down have that belief for Koto Shoho. He got up there, he was humbled, and now he just got to kind of shake off the rust, get back up there, and then just show the world that your future Ozeki Koto Shoho.
Well, that takes me back to my theory about Shodai, which is where I think Shodai going to college actually hurt his career irreparably.
Ooh.
Well, because he went to college, and I think as a sophomore he won college Yokozuna, and he could have immediately then joined sumo at Bakushida, and then probably been up into sumo within a year. Instead, he came back for his junior and I believe senior year, and he did not win any of the tournaments. And this was before Sandan made Tsukidashi. So he basically had to start from 0 at age 22. And so all of his formative pro sumo experience was him completely wailing on people he was better than up until he basically got up to Komusubi. And that was the first time his like natural cartoon sumo didn't work. And so I think it's just sort of like a pitcher who gets promoted too fast in the major leagues. He never developed that third pitch. So he's sort of like, I never figured it out until later in his career. He figured out, oh, I have this weird tachi-ai. I've now finally figured out how to time it for 1 year's worth of time, only 1 year worth of time. I have now figured out a way to get this tachi-ai to work for me 75% of the time. He hasn't been able to get that timing back in, when was his last double-digit win? He's only had
11-4 in January.
So like 1 since he's made Ozeki.
Yes.
It was to save. He went Kadoban instantly with that injury, but then he came back and got a Jun Yusho, and then he's had 4 middling tournaments since.
Well, I don't think Shodai would be an Ozeki if we had like a halfway decent Sanyaku right now.
It was a borderline case definitely for Shodai, because he had
32
the 13
wins.
and 2, 11, but he had the 8 in there. So I think the 13 and 2 with the Yusho kicker, and then like you said, it's not a great Sanyaku. Like, all right, let's bolster up the Ozeki ranks a little bit.
I think that's giving him enough credit. Because like he got better each time. If you rearrange that order, I'd agree he wouldn't have gotten it. But like he got better each time, ending with a Yusho, and that was a great year. That was like there was a while that Shodai absolutely was a top guy. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know like what gypsy curse he put on everybody else to like be the like one of the best guys for a year and then just kind of go back to whatever. But
his Tachi is like a Ferrari engine. It has to be perfectly calibrated to work at maximum efficiency. I think it took him this long to get his like time up there. If he had started at age 20 or 19 in Makushita, then I think he would have had to, instead of just physically dominating people, which he could do because he was like so much bigger than everyone in the smaller division, in the lower divisions. If he showed up at age 19, he may have had to learn how to like adjust his style, and he would have been young enough to implement those changes.
Sure.
So that's my basic theory about that. But if you look at Shodai's Ozeki run, like tell me Ichi Nojo or Mitakiyami couldn't do that in the next 4 tournaments.
I can tell you that because they have a much larger sample size of not doing it. I get
well,
your
so
point,
did
though.
Shodai.
Yeah,
like
that's a
Shodai
good
had
point.
1 year he had his Faustian deal with the devil for like 8 tournaments. It's like, here we go. Make me an Ozeki for 8 tournaments and I can get 8 wins every other tournament.
And then the monkey paw curls and he instantly goes Kautaban, right?
Well, if you look at all of our Ozeki, I think all of our Ozeki, except Terunofuji, have gone Kyujo in their first 3 tournaments. Going back to Tochi Notion.
It's been a weird run of Ozeki. We like Taka Keisho is like our longest. Well, I mean, he lost it and regained it, but like we don't have any of like the career Goeidos, or even Kisano Sato was a career Ozeki before he like decided to become a Yokozuna for 5 minutes.
Well, that I think is really the current story. It's that we still have an alpha dog and a Yokozuna who's clearly dominant, but what we don't have are true Ozeki anymore. We have 2 guys who are Ozeki because we have to have Ozeki, but I just don't feel we're at the point where we have Ozeki who are guys. I don't feel either of Ozeki I would bet on winning 10 wins in any given tournament, which feels weird.
Man, I wanted Takayasu to be that guy so bad, but what the hell?
Never get.
Dude's old. Dude's hurting old.
Yeah.
He's hurting old.
I mean,
he had
he's
4 junior
31,
show in
but-
a year at one point.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, 3. Sorry, Kisano Sato I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But yeah, he never quite. It's one of those things where when your style is like, all right, well, if my Tachia doesn't win, I'm going to wear you down. Those guys don't win championships because they're so tired by the end of the tournament.
And Takayasu's not winning those matches anymore. Like you
No.
said, like we said, he lost that 3-minute plus match to Kiri Bayama. That used to be his bread and butter. If Takayasu gets you into just like a leaning on each other match, Takayasu won that match almost every time, it felt like, but he's not able to get those anymore. And yeah, he's just kind of fallen apart over the last couple of Basho.
Yeah.
Curious if that coincides with him just absolutely choking a Yusho away.
Which time? Which one are we
fairly
talking about?
recently.
Oh, recently. The recent one. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was back in March. Where
Yeah, he had a full-on 2-win lead going into the last 5 days, and then he went 1-4.
And
He
pulled
went
a
10-5. He went 10-5 the next tournament, but then he started off the next one hurt, and ended up with a losing record, losing the last 4 matches, and then obviously we saw the absolute train wreck and devastating condition of Takayasu in this previous Basho. Like, if he doesn't retire soon, like I'd be absolutely shocked. Jake, what are your thoughts on the absolutely embarrassment that Takayasu has become?
2 rough tournaments does not a 31-year-old's career end. So come on.
It was pretty bad.
He's had worse stretches of injury like than this a couple years back. I think he's probably due to be retired to the old man Tamawashi circuit of like kind of bouncing in and out of the joy. But
Yeah.
like his current injury woes are not any worse than we have seen from stuff he's overcome in the past.
It's not a shame to be a former Ozeki anymore. It's like, I think Kota Shogiku broke that seal, and now it's like, no, we can still get paid. We're fine.
Yeah.
We'll just follow down the
2-3
band
years,
for a while.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Tochinoshin, like besides the occasional glorious Henka, is still like okay. I mean, he's not doing well, but he's like okay. He's sticking around long enough to get.
He's getting the
checks.
gentleman 7 ever. Like he's just like, we're gonna demote you 1 rank per tournament if you can keep getting that 7.
Well, I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
I was a question for you all. About a month ago, they finally translated the expert panel for Ozumo and traditions thereof. They created like an ad hoc panel of non-sumo people to come up with their ideas of what sumo was. I was wondering if you gentlemen have had a chance to read that one yet.
Is
I
that
don't
the
go
one where they're
out of-
not gonna let Hakuho have his name? That whole disaster?
They actually they do lay out what I consider a fairly persuasive case for doing so. It's just that it's kind of sketchy that they waited till Hakuho to employ this logic, but I do think the logic makes sense.
I think we're on the same page then. Yeah.
Well, the logic is that the whole point of sumo is that you're you give up your name, you give up your identity you subsume your identity into sumo. So that's why you take someone else's name, because it's not about you, it's about giving back to sumo. So if we say that, hey, this Yokozuna, because they were awesome, can teach under their name because they were awesome, great. But then the stable dies in 30 years. And then these people we have to switch things up. It's much better for the continuity of sumo and the mentor-student relationship if we subsume our egos into the idea that the system is bigger than anyone. And I do agree with that, but it's like, okay, but you just figured this out right now, and it's so clear that you hate Hakuho so much.
If they had figured this out, God, we got to say like 12 years ago, probably, before it was absolutely apparent that Hakuho was going to deserve one of these.
When Takanohana did, when the Takanohana scandal would have been perfect.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a perfect time to lay that out. But because of the timing of it, it does seem a little suspect. But no, I did not go through and read that because I don't intentionally try to piss myself off. And I knew that would be the result of that. Yeah. So yeah, what do you think? I think this will be the last thing before we have to wrap up. We're kind of wrap it up back with Hakuho. What did you think of the entire, he has to sign a pledge about his behavior in order to become Magaki Oyakata and have a chance to own a stable? Because there was I think it was a 5-person committee, or 5 people from JSA and 1 outsider, and at least 1 or 2 people of that committee were like, we should wait and see if he behaves for 10 years before we let him own a stable. That is not what is going to happen with Hakuho, but there were people in that decision-making committee that felt that way. But yeah, what are your overall thoughts on Hakuho having to sign a pledge to be good and toe the line?
Well, I think part of it is that they just want to make sure Hakuho, if you're part of the whole expert panel thing, was subtweeting Hakuho so much about just being not true Yokozuna behavior. And which is hilarious because 10 years ago, they were holding him up as the anti-Asa Shoryu. He's so young and respectful and we love him so much. I think it's the idea that right now there's an irrefutable crisis in sumo, and that crisis is the people in charge of sumo are Japanese and want to keep sumo Japanese and as a cultural thing for Japanese, because the main thrust of the expert panel thing was that sumo is not about victory, it's about sumodo, the way of sumo, and winning the correct way. And then I started to realize oh, that's right, because if we base it on championships, Japanese people are not the best anymore and haven't been for about 20 years. So we have to make it about somehow being Japanese, because no one's better at being Japanese than Japanese people. So it's the idea that we need to be, it's the idea that Hakuho can't be bigger than sumo. And for the past 10 years, Hakuho's sort of been bigger than sumo. Yeah. And now that he's not out there doing the thing anymore, so it's partially, I'm hey, part of it I think is good in that hey, you're not the center of attention anymore, and that's the point. That's the way of things. These guys are now the center of attention. Subsume your ego and teach these guys, and that's how you make your mark. I agree with that. What I don't agree with is that no one else has had to do this yet. And it just feels a bit where it's just we got our eye on you, guy. You all right, you're Japanese, but we're more Japanese because we were born here. And it feels like there's just a little bit of that still left in there. And I think Hakuho has enjoyed the fact that you can't do anything to me. I'm the greatest. So in the past few years, he's flaunted that a bit. But now they can. They can mess with Hakuho a lot. He's in the system now. So
he is the lowest rung of the system now.
I mean, he's still higher ranked than Rikishi, which is weird, but being the best Rikishi, I bet, is better than being the worst, Oyakata at some point. But I think right now it's like, no, you have to make sure you're teaching the next generation the proper way to do sumo. And for a lot of the past 5 years, the JSA has not been happy with his sumo.
Yeah.
So you've been pulling out crazy obscure comparisons all day here. So now it's my turn for one.
Do it.
I thought that it reminds me of Jason Newsted, the bassist for Metallica for a long time. When Metallica's original bassist Cliff Burton died, like a couple years into Metallica starting, they got this new bassist, and he was with them for like 20 years, but he was always the new guy. And when he ended up quitting, there was some interview that I saw when he quit Metallica, and he was like, I was always the new guy. That was never going to change. And that it was just being disrespected like that. And that he didn't like that. And to me, that's a similar, it feels like Hakuho, no matter what he does now, he'll always be like, yeah, but you're not you're just kind of like, you were a good wrestler and all that. And yeah, usually that's the number one thing we value when it comes to post wrestling career. But no, you're the new guy, you're the outsider. And especially the timing, like we mentioned on this whole report, is just kind of, it just feels mean and stupid and petty.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But sidebar, Rush used to call Neil Peart the new guy because he showed up on their second album.
The guy who wrote like all of their lyrics and everything, and he's the outsider.
37 years they called him the new guy. Yeah.
All right. This has been a real fun conversation, Jonathan.
We always have fun.
Oh yeah. Why don't you tell everybody who's listening to this, like, hey, I like that Jonathan Wagner, Mr. JWags guy. Where can they find your content?
They can find me on YouTube. I show The Dohyo on Mr. JWags channel. It is a occasionally published video dialogue. I go through a lot of statistical stuff. I have the Shadow of Hakuho series, but I also do commentary on every Basho with like a predictions episode and then a recap episode. Sometimes I do like deep dives into certain Rikishi. I did the very well received Tama no Umi episode, which finally came out. And yeah, I'm going to be unemployed in 2 weeks, so expect some more material coming out in the next month or so.
All right.
The wallet will suffer, but the sumo community will prosper from it.
You will all gain from me going through the expert panel and explaining to you what is in those 55 pages.
Yeah. But as always, you're welcome for the exposure here, because we know that's how you pay your bills. Having
from
you
all
on
my
our show.
sumo money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man!
Right.
As always, you can expect that check in the mail any day here.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast listening service. I was about to say your favorite 5-star service.
Most podcast listening services are not 5-star, in my opinion. But yeah, find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. GrandSumoBreakdown.wordpress.com is our blog. Mr. JWags, what number can they call to leave us a voicemail?
I don't know.
That's okay. I got this. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, you can leave us an email at grandsumobreakdown@gmail.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 805-613-7866. That is 805-613-SUMO. What you can expect from Grand Sumo Breakdown before the next tournament starts. The next episode we will be recording is a full biopic on Hakuho. We should have the entire gang together for that episode, and then Jake and I will be diving into the results of the Kyushu Bansuke and see how my predictions lined up with that. But until then, we will bid you all a fond farewell.
Farewell.
Thank you for listening to Grand Sumo Breakdown. Until next time,
Throw your salt high.
And keep moving forward.